Okay, hello. Now, several months ago, I posted a video about the felon hiring his muskrat to cut programs in the federal government, saying that they were, quote unquote, increasing efficiency. Now, I have worked with the federal government, and I know that cutting programs results in federal civilian workers losing their jobs. Federal workers are not concentrated around the D.C. area. There are millions of civilian employees spread all through the country. Every quote-unquote program has a program manager along with many other civilians that get paid in support of that program. There are thousands of programs that the public has never heard of that the government pays for. For example, the group that handles pay for all of America's military force is located in Cleveland, Ohio. And all the felon did was contribute to increasing unemployment. Plus, the newly unemployed former federal employees are now seeking assistance that they suddenly need. That's like kind of a double whammy. And in this presentation, Robert De Niro talks about an event that recently occurred. Apparently, about 20 Republicans decided to do right by their people or voters, and they go against what the felon wants, rather than blindly obey him. The felon calls people enemies if they do right by their voters and not follow his orders. Now, I've said it before and I'll say it again. There is a huge security risk roaming around in the White House and could be considered a domestic enemy because he wants to rule the entire country. Please watch the rest of this video. Thank you.
You know what? I've been around this town for a long time. I've seen a lot of things, good and bad. Some things that made me proud to be an American, and some things that made me sick to my stomach. But what happened today in the House of Representatives, that was something different. That was something that cut right through all the noise, all the garbage that usually comes out of Washington. And let me tell you something, it gave me hope. Real hope. The kind of hope I thought maybe I'd never feel again. Look, I don't usually get involved in this political stuff, you know? I make movies. I tell stories. I try to entertain people, make them think, sometimes make them uncomfortable. But sometimes you see something happening and you gotta speak up. You gotta say something, because if you don't, who will? If guys like me don't stand up and call it like we see it, then who's going to do it? So here's what went down today, and I want you to understand just how big this is. For months now, we've been watching this administration act like they own the place, like they can just do whatever they want with a stroke of a pen, like the Constitution is just some old piece of paper they can ignore when it gets in their way. The president, he signed this executive order, took away collective bargaining rights from federal workers. Just like that, boom, done. Now let me tell you who these federal workers are, because this isn't about some faceless bureaucrats sitting in fancy offices. These are good people, hardworking people who serve this country every single day. They process your veterans' benefits so our heroes get what they earned. They keep our borders safe from people who want to do us harm. They inspect the food you put on your family's table so your kids don't get sick. They're the ones who show up when there's a natural disaster, when communities are hurting and need help. And this guy, this president, he tells them they don't have a voice anymore. He says they can't negotiate for better working conditions, can't stand up for themselves, can't even have a say in how they do their jobs. You know what that is? That's not leadership. That's not making America great. That's bullying, pure and simple. And I don't like bullies. Never have, never will. I grew up in a neighborhood where bullies thought they could push people around just because they were bigger or louder or meaner. You know what happened to those bullies? Eventually, somebody stood up to them. Eventually, somebody said enough is enough. And when that happened, those bullies, they weren't so tough anymore. But today, something beautiful happened. something that nobody saw coming, including me. 20 Republicans, 20 of them, they looked at what was going on and they said, no, this is wrong. This isn't who we are. This isn't what America stands for. They joined with the Democrats and they passed something called the Protect America's Workforce Act. 231 votes to 195. And I know what you're thinking. Republicans crossing the line? Working with Democrats? That doesn't happen anymore, right? The parties hate each other too much. They can't even agree on what day it is, let alone something important like workers' rights. Wrong. It happened. And you know why? Because some people still remember what it means to have a conscience. They remember that they took an oath to serve the people, not to serve some guy sitting in an office throwing tantrums when he doesn't get his way. They use something called a discharge petition. Now that sounds like fancy Washington jargon, but it's really simple. It's democracy in action. When the leadership tries to bury something, tries to hide it away in some drawer so nobody can vote on it, well, the members of Congress can force their hand. They can make it happen anyway. It's like the emergency brake on democracy. When the system gets stuck, when the people in charge stop listening, this is how you unstick it. And that's exactly what they did today. Speaker Johnson, he thought he had this locked down tight. He thought he could just sit on this bill, keep it buried, protect the president from having to deal with the reality of what he'd done to working families. But democracy, real democracy, it has a way of surprising you when you least expect it. When that vote counter hit the magic number, when they reached 218, the majority they needed to pass this thing, you could hear a pin drop in that chamber. Then the gasps, the whispers, the realization that something historic was happening right in front of everyone's eyes. This wasn't supposed to happen. The script said it wouldn't happen. All the political experts, all the smart guys who think they know everything, they all said it was impossible. But sometimes people surprise you. Sometimes they remember that they're human beings first and politicians second. 20 Republicans. Let me say their names because they deserve to be remembered, because what they did took real courage. Brian Fitzpatrick from Pennsylvania. He led the charge. This guy, he's always tried to find the middle ground, but this was different. This wasn't just a negotiation or some political compromise. This was a rescue mission for working families. Jeff Van Drew, Chris Smith, Tom Kaine Jr. These aren't wild-eyed radicals or troublemakers. These are serious people, experienced legislators who looked at their districts, looked at their neighbors, and decided that protecting working families was more important than protecting their own careers. And you know what happened when they walked across that aisle? When they signed that discharge petition? The hardliners in their own party booed them. They actually booed them. Can you believe that? Here are these representatives doing what they think is right for their constituents, and their own colleagues are booing them like they're at a baseball game. But you know who was cheering? The federal workers, the families who are scared about their future, the people who actually do the work that keeps this country running. They saw a government that was finally working for them instead of against them. Now let me tell you what's really happening behind the scenes. Because the White House, they're panicking. They're not used to losing. They're not used to seeing their own people say no. For months, they've been operating like they have a blank check to do whatever they want. Executive orders flying left and right, bypassing Congress, acting like the other two branches of government don't even exist. And the reaction from the administration? It's been vicious. They're lashing out at everyone, calling people names, throwing around words like traitor, like it's confetti at a wedding. They're calling these 20 representatives enemies of the party. Enemies, because they stood up for workers' rights. You want to know what I think? I think they're scared, really scared, because for the first time in a long time, they realize they don't control everything. They can't just snap their fingers and make things happen. They can't rule by fear anymore. Democracy fought back today, and they don't know how to handle it. The thing is, when you govern by intimidation, you're only as strong as people's fear of you. But if a whole group stands up together, if they realize they have safety in numbers, you can't punish them all without hurting yourself. That's exactly what happened here. These 20 Republicans realized that they represent their constituents, not the White House. They realized that their oath was to the Constitution, not to any one man. And let's talk about what they were fighting for. Because this isn't about abstract politics or Washington games. This is about real people, real families. We're talking about the folks who make sure our veterans get their disability checks on time. The people who keep our national parks open so families can take their kids camping and hiking. The workers who handle logistics of disaster relief when hurricanes hit or wildfires rage. The inspectors who make sure the meat in your grocery store is safe to eat. The president's executive order, it stripped these people of the right to bargain collectively. It basically said, if you have a problem with your working conditions, if you think you're being treated unfairly, too bad, deal with it. It was an attempt to turn public servants into at-will employees who could be fired for any reason or no reason at all. It was about creating fear, about making people keep their heads down and their mouths shut. But Representative Jared Golden from Maine, he's a Democrat, but he gets it. He understands that working people don't care about your party label when they're sitting around the kitchen table trying to figure out how to pay the bills. They care about being treated fairly. They care about having a voice at work. They care about job security. Golden started this whole thing, this discharge petition. He knew it was a long shot. He knew the odds were stacked against him like a rigged card game. But he also knew that if he could just get this vote to the floor, if he could just get people to look at the facts instead of the party labels, common sense would win out. And he was right. But it took Brian Fitzpatrick, that Republican from Pennsylvania, crossing the aisle to make it happen. That took guts. Real guts, the kind of guts you don't see much in Washington these days. He could have played it safe, stayed quiet, gone along with the program like a good little soldier. Instead, he stood up. He said, you know what? I represent the people in my district, not the guy in the White House having a meltdown every time someone disagrees with him. That's what real leadership looks like. That's what courage looks like in the modern world. But the reaction from the hardcore supporters, the ones who think loyalty means never question anything, never thinking for yourself, it's been ugly, really ugly. They're calling for these 20 to be kicked out of the party. They're talking about primary challenges, about making examples out of anyone who dares to think independently. They want to turn the Republican Party into some kind of cult where you're not allowed to have your own opinions. You know what that reminds me of? The kind of stuff I grew up seeing in the neighborhood. The tough guys who demanded respect but never earned it. The bullies who thought fear was the same as leadership, who thought if you scared people enough, they'd follow you anywhere. But here's the thing about bullies. They're usually cowards underneath. And when people stop being afraid of them, when they realize the bully is all talk, that's when everything changes. That's when the bully becomes just another guy making noise. The thing is, Americans don't like bullies. We never have. It goes against everything we believe in. The more this administration attacks these 20 members, the more they show the country who they really are. They're showing that they're out of touch with reality. They're showing that they care more about control than they care about people. They're showing that they'd rather have blind obedience than honest service. And let's talk about Speaker Johnson for a minute, because this guy, he's the one who really got embarrassed today. His whole job is to keep his people in line, to count the votes and deliver them when it matters. Today, he couldn't deliver a pizza, let alone the votes he needed. He watched as 20 members of his own party walked right past him to sign that petition. That's gotta hurt. That's gotta make you question everything you thought you knew about leadership. You see, Johnson got caught in the middle of something bigger than himself. He's so afraid of the far right, so afraid of making the president angry, so terrified of getting angry tweets sent his way, that he forgot about everyone else. He forgot about the people in the middle who just want government to work. He forgot about the moderates who sent him to Washington to solve problems, not create them. And when you forget about the middle, when you only listen to the loudest voices, you lose the middle. When you lose the middle, you're done. But here's what really gets me fired up about all this. What makes me think maybe there's still hope for this country. The workers, the federal employees who were scared they were going to lose their rights, who were going to bed every night wondering if their years of service meant anything. They're celebrating tonight, and they should be. They deserve to celebrate. For months, these people have been going to work every day with a knot in their stomach. They've been wondering if they still mattered, if their voices would ever be heard again. They felt powerless, like the whole system was rigged against them. But today, the system worked. Democracy worked. And it worked because regular people refused to give up hope, refused to accept that things couldn't change. That's what this is really about. Not the politics, not the games, not the Twitter fights, or the cable news shouting matches. It's about dignity. It's about respect. It's about the fundamental idea that if you work hard and serve your country, you deserve to be treated fairly. You deserve job security. You shouldn't have to worry that some politician's bad mood is going to blow your career away. The president, he thought he could just wave his hand like some kind of king and make it all happen. Executive orders, shortcuts, bypassing Congress like they don't even exist. Well, today Congress reminded him that we have three branches of government for a reason. Nobody gets to be king in America. Nobody. That's what we fought a revolution to get away from.
Okay, thank you for watching. And I want to point out one thing. In the comments section, there's a link to a video that demonstrates how you can find technology that cures early stage prostate cancer without surgery, hospital stay, pain, or harmful side effects. That technology is the CyberKnife, and it cured me in 2007 as I stopped by for treatments on my way to work over a 5-day period. And by following the steps that I demonstrate in that video, you can find the facility or hospital closest to you that has a CyberKnife in it. Again, thank you for watching.